Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing another brand new movie for 2020. This time it's Mulan, the live action remake from Disney+. Now this movie definitely isn't perfect and has got its flaws, which I will talk about in this video review. But what I would say is that it's not as bad as all of the critics are saying at the moment. So if you don't necessarily constantly go back and compare it to the original, then it is an alright movie. Like I said, it's not perfect and it has got its flaws, which I will talk about in this movie review. But I just wanted to say that it's not as bad, in my opinion at least, as what everyone is saying. And I will be breaking down the live action remake of the brand new Mulan in this video review. So in terms of the plot of this movie, like I said, there are some notable differences between the original animation and the live action remake of Mulan. But that being said, the main story beats throughout the movie are actually pretty similar. So, the main premise of the movie is that there is a big war in China where one man from each family needs to go forwards and participate in the war. Now, because Mulan's father is actually a war veteran and is really old and weak, she does not want him to go, and because there's no other males in the family, and then because of this, Mulan wants to go forwards in her dad's place, and so undercover pretends that she's a guy from this family so that she can participate in the war and so that her father can stay at home and rest and be safe. And so because of that, the rest of the movie does have similar moments in terms of the whole male and female conflict, in terms of what's men's place in the world and what's female's place in the world and how that can be challenged, which is really great. And there is a bigger battle in this movie, which is really awesome to see as well. And obviously there is a brilliant revelation, which I will talk about in a moment. But that being said, there are some notable differences as well, such as Eddie Murphy's incredible Mushu character not being in this film, which is so tragic and just completely changes the tone of the movie, which I know they did on purpose, but that is a very dramatic difference in this movie. And while they are removing one character, they are adding a brand new character, which is the sorceress, who has a very similar story to Mulan, but she just decided to go on a very different path. Again, I'll talk about this character a lot more in a second. The love interest of the Mulan character is very different. This time it's not the general, it's actually another peer of Mulan, which is a very different setup in this movie. Mulan also is able to access her chi, which gives her different abilities, which is another thing that's very different in this movie. And then finally, the way in which Mulan is revealed to be a female to the rest of the group and to the world is very different in this movie as well. So, like I said, from a storyline point of view, there are similarities and the core moments are the same, but the execution is very, very different. So from a cast and characters point of view, it's a really interesting one with Mulan, as it's got a decent cast attached to the movie. I just feel like the actual characters, there's just a real lack of passion. The characters are just kind of playing their parts, but there's just a lack of emotional connection and believability with why these characters are doing what they're doing. Now this may be on purpose, because the world of Mulan, has very defined roles for men, very defined roles for women, and they just kind of do what they need to do, and there's just a lack of kind of passion and emotion. Maybe that's there on purpose, but just from a movie viewership point of view, I just feel like it's very difficult to connect and really understand why certain characters are doing what they're doing. But that being said, I know it's purposeful as well, because this movie is a lot more of a dramatic war movie than kind of being a fun comedic movie like the original was. But anyway, let's go through the characters one by one. So first up, we have Yifei, who plays the main character of Mulan. Now she does a decent job, but just like I said before, there was just a lack of emotional connection, and I just wish that she kind of pushed the emotional aspects of this character a lot more. Actually, the original animation, the character was so brilliant, so much charm, so much charisma, whereas this time I feel like a lot of that is watered down. So, there could have been a lot more passion with her wanting to protect her father. There's also not a real explanation into why Mulan is just risking everything to protect the emperor. I'm sure there's reasons there, but they're just not very well explained in terms of this character's motivations in this movie, and also the real struggle in terms of wanting to be who you are and wanting to break free from all of the constraints that you're kind of being forced to live with and all of that sort of stuff. I feel like, again, that could have been pushed a lot more in this movie. So overall, this character is great, but I just feel like reducing the comedy and reducing the charm of this character just made her less of a great protagonist in this movie. Next up we have Donnie Yen, who played the commander in this movie. He was fine in this movie. I feel like there wasn't that much tension between this character and the rest of the group. There was a lot more in the animation. And also the commander's second in command was not in this movie, and he was a brilliant addition in terms of adding a lot of conflict between all of the different characters. So removing that character just overall made the commander a lot weaker. I did like the fact that they removed the love interest aspect of this character and put it in another war ally, which I thought was a nice move. Next up we have Jason Scott Lee, who played the big bad in this movie, Bori Khan. Again, he was fine, but the same criticism that I had with the Mulan character. He just kind of wanted revenge, so you understood his purpose, but I just felt like they could have pushed it a lot more in terms of why he's wanting all of this, just putting more rage and desire in this character, because I just feel like he was being bad for the sake of being bad. But I feel like they really could have made this villain a lot more menacing and a lot more evil as well. The same criticism that we had with the Jafar character from the Aladdin live action remake. That character was so watered down that he just became a bit of a laughable villain, especially when you compare him to the original. So I just feel like the villain in this movie was not that great. Talking of villains, they added a brand new villain in this movie played by Gong, and I thought this was such a brilliant addition in terms of adding a sorceress into the cast who has a little bit of a similar story narrative to Mulan. You know, the two can relate to each other. She could have been a mentor figure for the evil side, and you can really see that this new addition has been brilliant for the movie to add a lot of charisma, in terms of adding a lot more magic, and in terms of giving Mulan a potential evil role model that she can kind of potentially relate to, and having another female in this situation. So I thought this addition was brilliant. But that being said, the character was really brilliant, but what they did with this character was just such a wasted opportunity. Her character narrative towards the end just made no sense about why she was doing what she was doing. She could have been absolutely epic, but they just wasted this opportunity, which was a real shame, because like I said, this character could have been brilliant. Next up we have Yoson, which like I said before was the ally love interest instead of being with the commander in this iteration of the film. And I just feel like because of that, the relationship between these two was there, but it just wasn't as big of a storyline as it was in the original. Also, the other group of characters, they made them a lot younger in this movie. So the friends of Mulan, while she's being trained as part of the army, are very different in terms of they are still comedic, but the humour is very different to how it was in the original. And then finally we have Jet Li, who played the emperor that all of these characters are trying to save. And like with all of the other characters, he was just a little bit lifeless. This character, you just couldn't really feel anything, you couldn't really connect with this character, and especially you couldn't see why Mulan is risking everything for this character. So, you know, overall, the cast and characters, there is a great cast attached to this movie, but the characters are just very lifeless in this movie. From a visuals point of view, this movie does look really, really great. It does have that Disney spectacle to it, which is really, really cool. And, you know, it does have the key moments in here, and seeing them in live action looks really, really great. So, you know, it's got the massive snow battle, which looks really, really cool. It's got the fireworks right at the end, which is really great. And the training scenes all look super, super cool. And so from those points of view, you know, the visuals are really, really great. Like I said before, you know, it's got a lot less charm, and the magic is slightly different in this movie. But that being said, they have got the epic scale of a dramatic war movie down to a T. So from that point of view, you know, the visuals and the cinematography in this movie look awesome. In terms of comparisons, like I said, this movie is very different to the original animation, and actually I think that's a really good thing. I'm really glad that they made some changes, they took some risks, some worked, some didn't work, but actually I did like the fact that I wasn't watching a like-for-like movie and that it was a new experience. There were some changes, there were some surprises in this movie as well. So from a comparisons point of view, I do think it's really great. You know, The Lion King was literally a scene-by-scene remake and a retelling, and from that point of view I didn't really like The Lion King because it just felt like I was watching the exact same movie. Whereas with Aladdin, you know, I'm glad that they took some risks. Similarly with Mulan, some worked, some didn't work, but I did appreciate the fact that it was a new experience, which is what I'm feeling with Mulan as well. But obviously everyone's going to want to know what are the differences between the original animation and the live action remake. So let's go through those now. So the first one is that there's no Mushu dragon. Like I said before, Eddie Murphy's character was such a legend in the original animation and just brought so much humour, so much comedy, so much light relief, and was just such a brilliant part of the whole ensemble. And with this character not being here, it is very different. But like I said before, they've done that on purpose because they obviously wanted to be a lot more dramatic, but you can definitely tell that this character is not in this movie. Another big difference is that this movie is not a musical at all. The classic animation had a lot of musical notes throughout the movie, different characters singing, different characters dancing, all of that sort of stuff. And they do have a massive song in the credit scene at the end, but the actual movie does not have any singing or dancing or anything like that. And so it's not a musical at all. Talking about the more dramatic moments in this film, they have removed the grandma character. She was really, really funny at the start of the movie, adding a lot of brilliant one-liners, bringing a lot of light relief in the movie as well. So that character has been totally removed. And instead, they have brought a sister for Mulan to have. I understand why they did this, because they wanted to show how different Mulan was to everybody else. And also for Mulan to talk to someone and so the audience can find out what she's thinking and all of that sort of stuff. But I just feel like the sister character was just a little bit non-existent. She didn't really add anything to the movie, and I just feel like the things that they wanted to communicate with this character was achieved so much better without this character in the original animation. So they've added this new sister, but she didn't really bring much to the table. The other character that they did introduce that did bring a lot to the table was the sorceress, which was absolutely brilliant. She was the character that was bringing a lot of magic here, adding a lot of tension, adding a brand new path potentially for the Mulan character. So I thought this character was a brilliant new villain, but just like with the sister, they were just not utilizing this character at all. They could have made her so epic and really, you know, even pushed Mulan to go down the dark side or something. It could have been so brilliant, but it was just so wasted. And what they did with this character at the end was just so unforgivable and was just so not related to everything that she had been doing up until that point. So a real wasted opportunity with the sorceress character. And the next main difference is how Mulan gets found out for being an undercover girl with everyone else, which is really, really interesting. In the original, she was found out because she was wounded, and then they kind of saw that actually she's a female. Whereas in this movie, it was Mulan's decision, and so it was a lot more of an empowering moment, was a very dramatic moment, and so I thought that was a really nice change that they did. And then because of that, they removed the epic scene in the beginning of the movie with Mulan cutting her hair with her father's sword, because obviously that's going to be a big revelation towards the end of the movie. Instead of having Mushu in this movie, they had a random phoenix in this movie instead. I know the phoenix symbolizes kind of rebirth and was a bit of a guide for Mulan, but it was just not comparable to the Mushu character at all. The next difference was the cricket character. So cricket was a brilliant character in the animation that, like Mushu, was a great addition. And brought a lot of comedy into the movie as well. There was a character called Cricket, this time humanized as an army peer, that did bring the comedy value, but was just not comparable to the brilliant Cricket character from the animation. And like I said before, the love interest was very different this time. Instead of being the general, it was a peer, and like I said before, I think that was a good idea, so that it could be someone on Mulan's level. Like I said before though, the whole love interest storyline just wasn't as big as it was in the animation. The army friends as well were very different. In the animation, they were a lot older, a lot more comedic, whereas in this one, they're a lot more jokey. And I just feel like they could have pushed the tension that these characters are having, trying to make Mulan's life a lot more difficult like they did in the animation. I feel like that wasn't that prevalent in this situation. The army tests were very different in this movie as well, in terms of how they demonstrate all of their skills and endurance and all of that sort of stuff. And then the final difference was they added the chi aspect of this character so that she can tap into her inner strength and make her even more powerful, and really showing how females can be just as powerful, if not more powerful, than men are on the battlefield. So like I said, a lot of differences between the original animation to the live action reboot. But like I said before, I really appreciated the fact that they took risks and did something different in this film. It's a bit of a happy ending with the Mulan reboot. So Mulan is able to defeat the big bad, which is Bori Khan. She's able to save the emperor. She's able to return to her village as a hero. The love interest aspect of the movie is left a little bit open-ended. Maybe they'll re-explore that. If there is a sequel, she is offered a job to join the Emperor to show gratitude for everything that she did. and they also look at the oath, which is loyal, brave and true, and add a new one, which is devotion for family, because this is what Mulan represents. So, you know, from an ending point of view, it's a really nice conclusion to this movie. Like I said, very different to the original, but a really nice close to the film. Overall, I did enjoy watching the Mulan reboot. It is very different to the original, and some of the character changes are a little bit frustrating because they've become a lot more lifeless, and some of the decisions that these characters are making are really confusing. But that being said, I did appreciate the fact that they did something new. It's a new movie experience, and if you haven't watched it already, then I would recommend watching it. Just be prepared that it is very different. It's not as charming as the original, and there are a lot of differences in terms of it's less comedic and is a lot more dramatic. But that being said, it is a new experience and I am going to recommend watching it, and for all of those reasons I'm going to give Mulan a solid 5 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise I look forward to seeing you in my next video.